Tonight's planning board meeting. If there is an emergency, I ask that you please exit to your left, take the stairs, and do not take the elevator. Besides that, this is basically a workshop, not a public hearing, so we will ask the applicants probably to come up and talk about their cases. Besides that, can we start with the first case? And can I make a recommendation? Can we start with the sign first?
Yeah. I think if you just want to make a motion to...
We don't have to, it's a workshop.
Oh, okay, you're right. Okay,
Okay.
great.
Thank you. But we
So-
might want to make that change for next week, too. Oh, they're the only one.
They are the only ones.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
If they're here, I hope they're here. Oh, you're here.
Okay, so
You don't mind going first, do you? Why don't you come on up and just,
case number PB 2024-02-01, request by Rochester Phoenix Martial Arts for signage approval to update existing signage on premises 563 Titus Avenue in a MUC mixed-use commercial district.
I seem to be missing the paperwork.
No, it's that one.
Very bad, you got it. Thank you.
It's the one that
Welcome.
doesn't
Thank you.
look like it.
Just state your name
I'm Veronica Curran,
and address, please.
563 Titus Avenue.
Thank you. So do you want to just tell us what you're planning on doing?
Yeah, we're martial
Oh,
arts.
sorry to interrupt, but if you could just move the mic closer to you and see if
Hello? Okay.
Not you.
We're a martial arts school, moved into 563 Titus Avenue in mid-October. And we're just simply replacing the already existing signs with our own, sorry.
Probably telling you they can see you on TV.
With our logo.
You're on TV.
Huh?
That's what they're calling to say.
And so you're not increasing the size of anything, adding
Correct,
any signs or
nothing.
anything?
Nope, just replacing the already existing signs with their own logo.
What was there before? I'm sorry.
It was a fish aquatics store.
Any issues from the town on the size of the sign or anything?
No, not to my knowledge. It appears to be at a similar scale to the other commercial businesses that are adjacent.
Any questions from any of the board members?
What's the coverage on this side? Do you know what the total coverage is
It's on the window.
on the windows?
I don't know if I can get that information if you do need it.
Yep, thank you.
Sure.
And this sign, I keep on pointing to stuff, but it's the box sign that's on the, what probably is the north facade. I don't know what,
I think this is the east side. That would be
oh, the
east.
east side,
Yep.
sorry, if I could read. How is that lit?
I believe that has a spotlight that we have not figured out how to work yet.
So it's not backlit, it's not internally lit?
We haven't figured out exactly how it's lit. We tried to play around with the light switches, and my dad's an electrician. He came out and took a look, and he can figure it out either.
Because we've not allowed internally lit signs in this district.
Okay. That was
So-
already existing. We didn't put any lights or anything in there.
Right, but now that it's being changed, we can change it too.
Okay.
So that's the advantage and disadvantage of trying
Okay.
to do something
No
that's exactly
internally
safe.
lit.
Yep. I mean, that would be, I would like to keep consistent. I don't know what everybody else is thinking on this, but
The other two have external lighting,
yeah, no, I can see that.
But that-
Yeah,
box sign is not.
that box looks as if it's internally
Internal,
lit.
yeah.
What are your hours of operation?
So it depends on the day of the week. Fridays, we do classes in the evenings only, 6 to 7:30. Saturdays is usually one morning class and then mid-afternoon class with swords, fencing, things like that. And then Monday through Thursday is typically, there's a noon class that goes until 1 o'clock, and then the main classes begin at 4:30, and they run until about 7:30.
The only reason I asked is you don't have to light it if you don't want to.
That, yeah, I was gonna say that too. We haven't figured out how to turn them on, honestly.
Unless somebody else on the board has a concern with that.
With what?
They don't have to light it if they don't want to.
No, but
Yeah,
I
just
think
not
what I'd
lighted.
like to do is prohibit them from lighting it internally.
I think you made that point, and
Yeah.
the other one is not.
Okay.
Your actual other one has the.
Right, I think that's external.
Right.
And in the muck, we do the hours, that 2 hours after you close, we ask you to extinguish it and turn it on 1 hour before
Yeah, I
you.
did see that.
Yeah,
I did see
okay.
that code.
The only thing that I'll add additionally is like when we've looked at other tenants, the one that jumps to mind is Octapharma, which is not in the muck, but asked for 3 signs, and we did not allow them to have 3 signs.
This is a replacement of what's already there.
Yeah,
So was Octapharma.
these signs were already
I know,
there.
but I think, this is already there, and it's only
We're simply
bringing
putting up
attention
our
to the
logo.
location of
They
it.
wanted 4.
Octapharma?
Yeah.
Yeah, they want.
Yes,
Pylon and 2 sides. So
and they got 3.
They got 3.
They got the front, the back, and the pylon.
yes.
Right.
Yep,
And
the
so
west elevation
they'll
was
have,
removed.
So was there a miscommunication for you guys not to come here prior to putting them up?
Oh, they're already up?
They are up, yes.
Yeah.
Like, we
This
did
is a
not know.
forgiveness,
pretty much. You don't know what you don't know.
not a permission. Was there a miscommunication from your landlord, or what
The
happened
landlord did
here?
not tell us that we needed permits for things like
Because
this.
I think that's important for staff to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The landlords worked through a realtor, and the realtor didn't communicate that with us.
Okay. Well, I
I
appreciate you
thought these were
coming here.
good renderings. I didn't realize the
Yeah.
actual picture.
No.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? I think it's pretty straightforward, good points that
No,
were brought up.
the only thing is that I don't believe that this is too much coverage, but there is going to be coverage that's allowed in the code.
Okay.
All right, so as long as it all matches
Yeah,
up.
the
we're
old,
good.
the old store had the same design on,
Yeah, like I
same
said,
coverage on their, on the window.
probable
I don't even remember the old store. Was they there a long time?
It was
violations still.
aquatics, something, yeah. There was like a koi pond in the middle of the room when we first,
No wonder they're not there anymore, Bernie. You didn't buy anything.
Sorry. Okay, I think we're good.
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Good luck with the
Thanks.
application.
So just to summarize, it seemed like there were sort of 2 sticking points. One was the lighting of the signs, that they not be internally illuminated, and then the second is to come with additional information on the coverage of the window decals,
The percentage.
the
Yep.
percentage. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And a note for staff to possibly talk to the landlord to ensure
Okay.
that they communicate the muck requirements. And said that, next case.
Great. Our next case, we have a sketch plan conference, request by McMahon LaRue, acting as agent for 43 North Real Estate for sketch plan conference for the proposed redevelopment of a 3-story brick building with site-related improvements on premises 41 Colebrook Drive, AKA 4530 St. Paul Boulevard in an R1 residential district.
And if I could ask staff, so we all read the newspaper, so we know there's apparently an Article 78, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so how does that impact us?
Sure, so yes, there is a pending Article 78 in regards to the zoning board of appeals and their decision to approve the use variance. And so at this point, I don't believe there's anything that I don't believe that the town can not accept a site plan application. However, the applicant is doing it at their own risk. Because obviously if the use is not approved and a site plan cannot be approved, site plans have to be compliant with the zoning code. So, well, we can ask the applicant what their next steps are. At this point, it's a sketch plan conference. I think they want some initial feedback. But yes, it's at their own risk. If they decide to go through this process, come to multiple meetings, incur.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know there's 6 mics and 7 of you, but with the way the splitter is, we can only have so many wired ones at once. please try and pass them around so you're speaking into the mics as best you can. It is kind of hard to hear people
Is
downstairs.
this one working?
Yeah, just heard the taps.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you for that explanation. Appreciate it. So I guess if the applicant's here, if you want to, sure. It's the first time you've come before this board.
Yeah, yes.
Long time
Look
getting there.
familiar. Yeah. Nothing good happens quickly. I feel like that's just the reality of real
Just state
estate
your name and
development.
address and
So Joel Barrett, I'm on Fairhaven Road in Rochester, New York, and with 43 North Real Estate. The plan was submitted by our civil engineer, Greg McMahon, Saranaquite resident, so high level, we submitted for use variance under financial hardship. We were granted the use variance by the zoning board, I think at the 30th day or whenever the last day possible. A group served a Article 78. My understanding is we're allowed to proceed again, like kind of at our own risk, subject to gaining final approvals with however the Article 78 turns out. So we're moving forward just because all intents and purposes, we feel that the zoning board, we agree with their decision. We feel that their decision was based on fact and, all the legal stuff associated with that we felt comfortable with, that we were well supported and they made a decision adequately, but, it's, anyone can, file an Article 78 at any time, which is news to me. It was something that I wasn't familiar with, but we're moving forward because we feel like the decision made by the town was grounded in fact and whatnot. So our plan, which we will be going forward with a National Historic Register nomination on the property. The building will be historic, so we'll be constructing based on historic parameters. Ultimately, it was to subdivide and only focus, this project's only associated with the school. That's the only part of the parcel that we're acquiring. We are proposing a small addition to the rear of the structure, which it's to the rear, so it doesn't change the streetscape or visibility to the building or what it would look like for the majority of, public traffic and transport. It looks like we're able to have approximately 18 apartments if we're able to utilize the lower level of the building for 2 apartments. If we're not, it's 16 in total. Based on some historic requirements, because the lower level of the building used to be the church, that has to, at least 2/3 of that building has to be kept open, which is why we requested for availability for commercial space. So predominantly, the majority of the building, probably from, I'm not sure if you've been in the building or have seen pictures, or, I know you can tell from the floor plan, but the northern portion of the lower level will be commercial space, and right now we're in talks with, coincidentally, a business that is R1 approved, a daycare, is very interested in occupying that space, so.
So commercial is going to change your parking requirements.
The commercial will create, I think it's 4 spaces per 1,000. So with our parking requirement here, we are knowing that we are in need of 28 spaces to be on some type of shared agreement with, so our parking table does indicate that. On the residential side, I think we have a sufficient residential parking spaces. So I think it says 30 in this little proposed plan. Our commercial square footage has been reduced. I think this plan was prepared, and I think we did submit additional plans via PDF to bring residential into the lower to decrease our parking need. And some of this is going to be why we're still at a sketch plan stage, is because it's subject to not only town approval, but historic approval of the lower level space and how much we're required to keep open and still make it a historically compliant project.
Okay, so if you're talking about a daycare, then you're going to have buses or something coming in and out, right?
I don't know a ton about the operation. We have just started kind of high level speaking about them, so.
I know about that.
Yeah, so I think part of it will be once we determine a commercial tenant, if that is going to be the person. I don't know if our timelines are going to line up. People may be familiar with the daycare that's using the space on Paddenwood. The school district is taking back that space, so they've been in, called me probably 2 years ago about when we started this. So it does seem like there's a possibility the timelines line up, but again, I'm not certain about the operations, and I guess what we would be looking for with the site plan approval is just to say we are having vanilla box space, and then once we determine an occupant, if it is a daycare or if it is some other type of commercial use, I don't know if we have to come back and get their hours of operation approved and other factors associated with the tenant, because we will not be the operators of that commercial space. I don't know the answer to that.
Because I don't know, it's gotta be zoned residential, right, R5? They got a special use permit, they didn't change the zoning on it.
Right. So we got a use permit for up to 25 residential apartments and 5 individual commercial suites of up to 12,000 square feet.
Restrictions on the use.
That I don't
Well,
know enough about.
I don't usually work with the zoning board of appeals, and so that seems fairly broad to approve commercial as a general use versus a specific use of 18 or 16 multifamily units. But yes, I mean, whoever the tenant is, it could potentially change the parking requirements. And so if this site doesn't accommodate what is required, then the applicant would have to go for a variance. And in terms of coming back to this board, right, because it would be internal, right? If it would be in terms of,
Into traffic flow with buses and things like that,
I was gonna say the type of use probably would.
right? But
But
we
remember,
don't need to get stuck there tonight, because I think we're probably a few steps away from there.
and if you're comparing this to the use of the last viable use of the building was a school, right? That's the last time it was used. So
But
if
without
there's gonna be a,
residential attached.
right, but residential, the traffic generation for residential and a school, residential is gonna be lower. And so, and the number of the daycare in the, just that, you know, it's not using the same number of pupils as that whole school would, so it's gonna be generally lower than what was the old.
No, but there still is parking requirements that he's
Yeah,
gonna.
yeah.
There's gonna, right? I'm interested in the new addition.
But can I go back to some of the questions on what you
Yeah.
brought up? So you mentioned, well, first off, I think it would be helpful for this board to see what was approved, right? Just so we know. If it might answer some of the questions Mr. Richards had. But you mentioned historical parameters, and I know some of the folks on the board were on the historical committee, but what are the parameters? It would be nice that we had those, so we understand. I'm just trying to understand what are,
If they're gonna apply for National Register nomination, I assume after tax
Yes.
credits, like, the Preservation Office will work that out with the developer and make sure that they're working within Secretary of the Interior standards. So, you know, in the event that there's a conflict with something that, you know, then we'd have to muddle through that, but generally, especially from the documents that we've seen so far, there's nothing that jumps to me that really would be a huge concern, and if it
Right.
was, you'd work it out with SHPO.
the only thing that caught my attention is you said it has to remain 2/3 open. That's the whole building?
That's for the lower level space. So,
Because?
because it used to be part of a church, so that used to be where they had their worship. So the historic use of a public space was wide open. So you would walk into the church and you would see the altar and you would see your pews. So what they're saying is, oh, you can't take a former public space that was completely wide open and turn it into a bunch of small enclosed apartment spaces. So what they're saying is on the lower level, not on a rooftop addition or anything like that, that we would be limited to keeping 2/3 of that in basically its existing format. And if we look at the site plan,
But you can't do anything with it? That's what I'm trying to understand.
oh, we cannot enclose it any further than one demising wall.
So you can still do something with it?
We can still, and that's what I'm proposing is why we need a commercial occupancy for this space. It can be occupied, it just cannot be subdivided in a way that divides it into multiple smaller commercial occupancies, or it does not work for residential occupancy because it would be too subdivided and too far away from its historic use as a public space of worship.
Now I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, and that only pertains to the lower level, which is why on the lower level site plan, we did show 2 options. One being kind of essentially how it is now, and then another with a couple residential units, and then the rest, like 6,000 or 7,000 square feet of commercial space. The one thing I will say on the parking is we did line this up as if the commercial parking was taken into account. So our parking schedule shows what we need from a parking space for residential, and then there is a crossover in shared parking, which is kind of in this, yes, there's some of that, not the entire part of it, but, so we have to get a shared parking agreement with the parish to be able to count that for our needs if, we do have ultimately end up with a intent, a commercial use. My understanding of the commercial code is for every 1,000 square feet, we need 4 parking spots. And the residential, I think, is 1.5 or, depending on bedrooms, or perhaps 2 per unit. So, residential's fine, but then because of the commercial is 25 spaces in general, we need overflow to be able to meet those requirements. I'm not positive about that. I know the table was updated and the parking was displayed as if we were taking all of the commercial parking into account. Now, if we do have a daycare use and buses, I'm not prepared to say exactly how many or drop-offs or show how our site plan would provide for that. The only other piece that I could say from a traffic perspective is we do have a cross-access easement to be able to access Washington Street and St. Paul Boulevard in addition to the a dedicated entry on Colebrook. So we are allowed to drive through the neighboring property to enter and exit. Right now, we're proposing to enter at the breezeway entrance here would be predominantly the residential entrance because we're proposing an elevator in that section. And then we would also have a lower level entrance to this spot. But ADA accessibility, this is the only spot that we can enter and have access to the multiple floors. Actually, it's right next to this on our property line. This is the north end, so.
I can't see what you're doing.
Oh.
Okay.
So, and I think it should show, it'll probably be in this vicinity. Yes, there's a breezeway that connects the church to the school. I'm not sure which
Yeah, 3 or
plan.
4s.
Yeah, so right, this small portion of, the school building is in the center. So there's an access point here, which I'm suggesting is our primary residential entry. There will be an elevator placed just inside that door, somewhere in this vicinity. And that elevator will grant ADA access to the lower level if there is commercial space there, or any of the floors, 1 and 2, really. The rooftop addition would be an addition where you would enter your residence and then you would go upstairs to an addition. So it's not, it's a 2-story unit for the rooftop.
Can you come from the back parking lot? And from the front?
Yeah, so you could walk in that way. There's double-sided doors there. So if you're accessing from Colebrook, you can, get to the elevator in that way
So you could come
from the
here
street.
and from here?
Yes, and then also from a traffic pattern perspective, we have the ability of this as a dedicated entry, but we have a cross-access easement to be able to pull in here into our parking spots and then into our building.
And they're still gonna stay connected here?
Right now, our plan is to have a maintenance agreement for the breezeway, and we don't have plans to demolish that. It is a fairly attractive structure. It's nice to see that there. We are going to be using it as an entry. And I see Father Gagno is here. We're discussing kind of a maintenance agreement for that structure since it's technically still owned by them, but it'll be more of a demising wall. Right now, it's completely locked off. You cannot exit the school that way or get into the church from the breezeway now because the school is locked up and boarded up. But we will plan a demising wall there, but we will retain, because it's on the property line that we're subdividing, the entry door to be able to get into the school space that way. There's also entry doors on this side of the building, which is your primary entry. There's an entry door here at the side of the building as well. There's quite a bit of egress. I know it's probably not as well displayed on the site plan, but if you get into one of the floor plans, you can kind of see where there's overhangs on the exterior footprint of the building. So even on this, or the first floor plan that we're proposing here, you can see some of the interior stairwells.
If you holler out page numbers that you're on,
I know, I
Really
didn't print it
helpful
out.
for
I
us.
think that I'm not looking at your submission, unfortunately. I should have,
3 of 4 is the main site plan.
yeah, he's
Oh, you
trying
got-
to
I got a
talk to
copy?
us about the
Awesome.
floor
Well, it's,
space.
from someone who's not here.
sorry about that, guys. So first I was referring to page 1, which is kind of our overarching site plan. And you know, this is the site plan as it stands now.
Existing conditions, right?
Yes, you're right.
So that's not really your site plan, that's what's there.
Right, you're right. And the second page would be our subdivision plan. So I wish I highlighted some of this for you. And our plan would be taking this Lot 2 structure and taking, you know, from like a sliver, cutting in between the middle. But the goal was to maintain the Life Center space and the church on one parcel. They did not want the property subdivided any further. This allows us the access to the area where I proposed the elevator, which would be on, I guess, the west side of the school building. The school building's a little easier to identify because it almost looks like a cross. And, you know, there's doors on this south, or, you know, kind of the southwest side. There's doors on this east side here. There's an overhang with a door on the front. There's a main stepped up door here. There's a door here, and then there's another door on this side. So we probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways to get into the property at varying levels.
Okay, so tell me about this extension that you're building.
So the extension would be on the rooftop. We had done something similar in the village of Fairport probably 4 or 5 years back. The rooftop would be on the rear section of the building, and what makes it historically compliant is that you know, Brad described our, you know, Department of Interior standards. So if you're a passerby walking on the street, you're not really going to notice it because of more of your sight line and your perception, because you'd be looking on top. And I can tell you what page that's on if we have.
I don't think it's in your plan.
Okay. Do you guys have floor plans?
It's on the floor plan.
Yeah.
Internal
Elevations.
floor plan, but it's not on the external plan.
Yeah, because it doesn't change the contour of the building, which is perhaps why it wasn't put on the site plan. And it doesn't require,
And it doesn't change any shadowing or anything like that?
I'd have to imagine, depending on where the sun was, that it would cast a slightly different shadow than it does currently. I'm not positive. That's something I've not looked into.
It's not going to interfere with anybody else's.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually I've not been asked that, but I don't know the answer to that. I know we are doing a sightline study, and I'm not sure if that was presented, but
So where do you describe this addition?
well, I think it's in the elevations.
Here, it's on this plan, Bernie. This
So-
is actually his second floor, which would be the roof plan. Okay.
This is the front of the building, this is the back?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I think we
Well,
also
that's gotta be
submitted,
Colebrook up here, right?
Colebrook would be to this side.
This side.
North side.
Okay.
Yep.
Are these new or are they existing?
That would be the addition. So on those elevations, you're seeing it from the west side and I think the south side. Now, these very preliminary sketches, we didn't have a lot of time to be able to meet this meeting. And the rooftop addition was somewhat of a later stage based on our apartment configurations, but our goal is, and then we're working with Christopher Brandt, who I think you guys know on your board here. He's our historic architect. So I'm not certain this drawing is currently in compliance with historic standards. He's provided comments on it to say, revise this. So this is pretty preliminary.
Yeah.
But I think from a massing standpoint and the square footage, like location on the building, my understanding is like at least the footprint is historically compliant. What they want us to do with the exterior, whether it's brick or matching the material or they want to see a different material, some of those things are yet to be,
And
I don't know the answer yet.
A lot tighter on the exterior than we will. And I mean, it's subservient to the original building. They'll probably want you to differentiate it slightly so that people can tell that it's not original to the
Yeah.
building. But yeah, like, I think he's got people who will take care of that, and the Preservation Office will have the final bid on that. But I am curious about the timing. So like, has it been determined eligible?
Yes.
Yes. And so will that require it to be a type 1 action in terms of seeker?
I would have to go back and check the lists, Because I do know some municipalities on their own municipal list that they have that have, if it's either like a historic structure or a property or adjoining to that,
Adjacent, it can
if it's adjacent,
require
it can.
So I would assume that if it's been determined eligible, or it may already be listed by the time you go through?
Well, it's sort of because of the Article 78, everything kind of has to go in and draft and not finalized until that's finalized. So theoretically, like, our initial hearing is in April, and if that hearing is ruled in our favor, there can be an appeal, which could last, it could be 12 months in total from the submission. So I feel like I'm not super well prepared, and I apologize because there's a lot of questions I don't know the answer to, but we wanted to get an initial draft out to just kind of show that we're resolute in the process and going to be working on and refining this over the next 12 months. But my goal would be, if this takes 12 months, to really hash out a plan that works for the town, community, commercial setting, parking, all of that fits together, and historic, that if the Article 78 does go that way, then we're willing to take that risk and, okay, here's our final submission now that we are finalized with that process. If it does not go our way, then then what the work that we're doing now is for naught. So that's, or the time spent.
I know not every neighbor is supporting this. If there's some neighbors that
Yeah.
want this Article 78, and it's actually against the town. It has nothing to do really with you.
Yeah.
Have you been meeting with any of them?
Yeah, so and I didn't come totally prepared with this, but we did have probably 2 or 3 community meetings where we had held them at the exempts. This was early on through the start of the process. We've engaged with each, I think, 6 different heads of neighborhood associations. So like, as we've been stepping through the process, like, we've done surveys, we've done petitions for this. We've met with the neighborhood association, at least as a disseminator of information. We've met with, I've probably talked personally to, we have a waiting list of 100 people that are neighbors that I'm talking to pretty regularly about it, because they want to know the status, or when they can move in, or when they can sell their house, or, things like that.
And they
So-
feel that they have an ability to give you input.
Oh, yeah. Like,
Okay.
I would say that when
That's the
we,
important part to me.
we were going out, like, our goal was to repurpose the structure. So when we first started, prior to any submission of variance or contemplation of a rezone, we met with the community multiple times and said, would you like commercial or residential? And I was really thinking, like, hey, this would be a great, like, artist studios. The classrooms could be small business. Like, that's kind of where I was going with it first, because residential was so vehemently opposed. And by our 3rd meeting, everyone said, well, we don't know if we want commercial, or that type of space. We'd rather have nicer residential. So we really took this as sort of what it is a vacant building that can't be used. And we said, what's going to work best for the town? And, I grew up here too, and, my family's still here. And it's important to me that I do believe in my heart, regardless if there's an Article 78 or not, that we have a vacant building that needs to be repurposed, and
Yeah,
let's use it.
The Article 78, like I said, is about
Yeah.
the towns, where they're doing business.
Yeah.
Can I just take a few liberties here? I think we're missing things like landscaping, lighting. We look at a lot of the exterior of the building.
Okay,
As beautiful as the inside is going to be to you,
yeah,
we don't have a whole lot of say-so in that unless it's going to be fire compliant codes or something like that. So I know that we're missing quite a few things, and it's not because you're not thinking of them, I'm sure
Yeah.
you are, but those are the things we're going to be looking at, including like where your dumpster is going to be, if you're going to have one. I know that there was a little issue with utilities at one point, that the utilities for the apartment are connected actually to the church, which is connected to the house or something like that. It wasn't
Yeah.
that the case?
the gas line flows through our property that feeds the church. So previously, it used to go through the church's property, and then we were getting some mapping done, and RG&E didn't know where the gas line was located. So we had to come back and kind of do a private, it is now flagged because we were going through that exercise. So the gas line runs through the church, or through the school to the church, because the school is built first. And there's a water line that feeds the parish center, which was the former rectory, that runs through, but we'll do some type of utility easement for that. I do think we didn't do a landscape plan, but I'm definitely comfortable with, submitting that as part of our, what I do think we have a dumpster placement. So we do have the dumpster, I think we have all the other requirements that we would need for a site plan submission other than the landscape plan.
Yeah, is there gonna be external lighting on the building? And then you're putting something on the roof, and I was gonna ask about the lighting and how much of the roof they could actually use, right? Because it's not clear. Like, is it only these private decks they can use, or is this whole roof gonna be available
Oh.
to the residents to use?
For code, we know that this deck would be available for the public and residents. So anybody, well, the commercial use and residents. And then the decks that are part of the addition would be individual to those units themselves.
So you could rent this deck out for an event?
But it would only be this area. This is all closed off, this is all gated, so they're able to come up through a new rooftop penetration. And we have the ability, without providing ADA access, to do I think it's 175 or 200 square feet.
we're
So
probably gonna
just
wanna
this
see the
portion.
Safety equipment that's gonna be around that decking, that kind of stuff is, we love the outside of buildings more than we
Yeah.
love the inside.
So I'll just add that, just a reminder, this is sketch plan, so maybe provide the applicant with recommendations for landscaping, for lighting. Like, we would like to see native species, we would like to see, and that might help so that when he returns, that he already knows your preferences.
On landscaping, it's conservation.
Do you have that?
Only if it's online. If an architect has it, I don't know if I have it independently. Okay.
Online, you should find a landscape guide that gives you
Okay.
specifics. But in addition to the landscaping, I'd like to see, are you gonna have areas outside for the residents to use? They should be called out. You know, they're gonna have grills and things like, you should just point out what that is, because
Or that might be what you do on the rooftop, but it should be pointed out.
Yeah, I don't think we can by code have grills past a second story, but yeah, so exterior space, exterior landscaping, we can do that. Those are
we wanna see where you're
reasonable.
gonna put it, how safe it is for parking and, all of it.
And if you could also delineate really where you want the subdivision to happen, so we know where the cross accesses are gonna have to happen, which also means that your tenants are gonna be somewhat restricted in those areas. I think that would be helpful.
I think we do have the cross-access. I think what we're missing is we're definitely missing the lighting plan and landscape plan, and definitely like areas of external shared space, like, you know, if we are gonna have like a picnic area or things like that. I think the only place that grills could go would be on the decking areas, but I believe that those decking areas, you cannot have a grill on a second story. At least that's my understanding of,
Yeah,
She's trying to get her.
oh,
Sorry to interrupt, guys, just please either speak up or physically move them closer. I know we're turning to talk to each other, as is the nature of the tables, but legally I need to be able to hear you when it's rough downstairs. That's
Thank you.
Bernie's number. That thing closer.
and then because it's early, I would still say that we have materials for the addition. The decking, you know, so materials for any like proposed additions, windows, we are keeping the windows and restoring them, so that's something, there is already storm windows on those. You know, in terms of like overarching landscaping, because we're not building new, we are planning to enhance the landscaping and add something for beautification, but,
but
So-
that would be interesting to see.
yeah, okay. So that makes sense to me.
Any security features?
Well, all of our buildings, they're basically, you know, ones that they're locked down kind of 24/7, so it's all fob. So the residential areas would be separate from the commercial space. So we do these just remote locking systems and fob and key code access. So it's all digital. People, even on our, you know, entry to an apartment, we don't carry any physical keys anymore. We sometimes have a landlord master key that's used for our property management employees, but otherwise, we do have adding internal cameras and external cameras is something that we do, but it would only be in obviously common area spaces or, you know, potentially the parking lot, that type of thing. But lighting is something I didn't think of, and generally what we try to do is like a dark sky policy with our lighting, that it doesn't leave
we'll
the
help you
site.
with that.
Yeah, okay. And I know my architect has had to do that in other areas, because I've had to say,
The other thing that we're going to want to know is your HVAC systems and how you're
Mm-hmm.
handling those, and if they're external, how they're going to be screened, and the decibels on them.
yep. So we are going to be using a ducted heat pump system. So it's going to be an air source heat pump. The whole building will be electrified. We're not using natural gas in any of the spaces. We will maintain our natural gas in case there's a commercial need for it, or if they have any, because it's currently still a cafeteria, so I'm not sure if that cafeteria can be repurposed if it is a daycare and they need to cook or prepare food and need natural gas within the space. So we're not going to remove the line, but otherwise it will be completely electric service. And they do have condenser units, so the condensers are probably in that 3x3 or so, for the size of the apartment spaces. But the heat pumps will be contained within the residential units. And, during heating season, it flips one direction, and cooling season, it flips the other. So electric heat pumps have kind of been
You'll have some on the roof that we'll want to see and
Yep.
hear how noisy they might or might not be.
And so, I just want to get a handle on the timeline of events. So, it sounds like you are holding off on finishing the register nomination until the other things come into view.
Well, from a registered nomination perspective, it's
That wouldn't matter.
because it's going to be placed on the National Historic Register. Like, the entire complex is meaningful to that. I'm still working out with the parish, or we have to be an individual applicant of it, which would only happen after subdivision. So essentially, I'm going to get it to the finish line in all aspects. Do as much work as I possibly can, waiting for the outcome of the Article 78. Hopefully, after multiple meetings, this is going to take some time to figure out all these details. They will be right at the finish line, and hopefully with a successful Article 78, then we will push it over the finish line, finish our approvals here, acquire the property with the subdivision, and then finalize the historic approvals as an independent, subdivision, and, come back for
If
building permit.
So we could approve a number of things like the location of these heat pumps and so on and so forth, and then whatever time you find appropriate, you finish the NR registration, and then you go through your part 1 and part 2, and then in part 2, things don't match up with what we approved here, you just come back for a revision.
Yeah, we are doing our,
You could put heat pumps all over the place.
yeah,
Shippo could say, oh no, and so in
Yeah.
that case, you would then have to come, I don't think it'd be a big deal, you would come back
Yeah.
for revised site plan approval and say, we didn't, the preservationist office is asking, it could be anything.
yeah, it's true.
That's what I was just, and then it would also impact, I think, it may impact the secret, because if it's listed, or if it sounds like it's already been determined eligible, which I think triggers type 1 anyways, but that timeline of events could,
Yeah.
I'd hate
It's a
to have
good
you go
point.
multiple places, because if you've got
Yeah.
your part 1 and 2 approved ahead of time, then you would present a plan that's already been approved by SHPO.
Right.
It might be a little cleaner.
What we're trying to do is we are doing this in conjunction. So we have started our part 1. We've had SHPO, has been on the site. We have our historic architects, Chris Brandt from Barrow Architecture. He's been working with the part 1. So he consults on our stuff. It's essentially, we draft something, and then Chris reviews it, and then SHPO reviews it. So we're kind of doing this real time without formal submissions. And I think that they're allowing this because we have multiple projects going on together, and they kind of understand that, hey, we want to help our applicants and, preserve buildings, things like that. So we're basically taking whatever we determine from an architectural percent. Historic has had a view on some of this, not as much as we needed to present you guys with a formal plan, because I'm not sure exactly how much of the basement. I think it's 2/3 of what I've displayed, and we actually did submit some updates to this that we didn't end up getting to the printed copy, but it was based on historic suggestions. So we have already made modifications, and like you said, it's going to be continuing modified probably until we're done, with the project, unfortunately.
This basement schematic that we have now, I don't know, we're not really concerned with interiors, I'm just curious, this is not the current, or?
I think you have 2 versions in yours. So if you do not see if you do not see 2 apartments in there, then that's not the current version that we're working off of.
There's 2 of them in there.
Okay, so you did get an updated. And then,
There's another version. Lisa was on the electronic.
Those two different, oh, there's like an alternative. Oh,
yeah, so this is the plan that we're working. There's 2 apartments in the south. It's close because we have the 2 forms of egress that are easily, and then this is approximately 2/3 of the remaining space. So this wall would be the only added wall. All of this is our existing. So when I said we have to kind of keep the space open, I meant not, do interior demising walls and kind of, make this into smaller. And again, I would need to get clarity on that because,
Yeah.
and this is the one that was emailed, so I apologize. It didn't make the
That's not a part that
physical.
we're going to be terribly interested in until it becomes commercial and we need to know what the space is for parking. The other thing I'm going to look for is bike racks
Yeah,
for the outdoors. We're also going to want to know on the cross-access where you're using some of the parking lot, if you need to, of the church property, how you're going to get the pedestrians safely to your building.
okay.
You're probably gonna wanna know about snow storage.
I think it's on there.
It's on the,
His property.
it's,
Little tiny.
yeah, you don't
Does
have
it
the
snow here anymore?
storage on it. Yeah.
We do, I think we do have snow. I think there was something proposed, but,
It-
okay.
Not on your property.
because you
in
have
the
to keep it
existing,
inside.
It shows it.
Okay,
It'd have to be one of those agreements they'd have to show us then.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what's gonna happen with it, as long as you get it in writing, I'm good.
yeah, okay.
So the proposed dumpster enclosure is wooden. That's nothing we're gonna be looking for.
We look for split.
CMU, split face block,
Okay,
more rigid. Also the location. You're showing it to the west of a storm catch basin proposed. We all know dumpsters get stuff on the ground and then the
Yeah.
prevention
Yeah,
is
you don't want
being what
that
they
going
are.
into the,
We'd be blowing everything right into that. So potentially switching those two, pushing the dumpster enclosure to the east,
I'm not uncomfortable with that at all.
and it would actually be a straighter drive-in for the dumpster pickup as well.
Yeah, I see it at an angle right now,
With
which
the
makes it
proposed
difficult.
garage Where you have it, I think that would mitigate that for pickup and emptying within that. It'd just be a simple swap of the two. Ease of access would be huge, but the
Yeah, I think you're right.
material they're made of as well is definitely something we're looking for CMU
Okay, yeah, I don't,
versus the proposed on the detail drawing is all wood frame.
is it? Okay.
yeah.
So you want it out of block, all sidewalls,
Yeah.
block and,
Split face
okay.
would be real nice.
Or even materials that complement the building.
Right, again, yeah,
Yeah.
mirroring the building potentially.
And it could be that Chippo has an idea for you also.
Historic dumpsters or?
My guess is they won't want chain link.
Yeah. And they might not even like that position, so.
So can I just ask, once you start, you get through everything and start, how soon between when you start doing the revitalization to when people move in? Process?
I think, I'm proposing 1.5 years, so 18 months at a maximum. I think if everything was completed for us to start, this is a 12-month construction project for us. Now, in terms of getting final CFOs and, ensuring all of our equipment works properly, I would say I project, 1.5 years, but I probably think it's like 14 months.
But you want the Chippo designation for the tax credits, right?
So SHPO, the way it's lining up is, we gain our SHPO, hopefully, we're going to do as much SHPO and municipal approval process in concert with each other as possible, hopefully getting through planning and zoning board within the close to the 12-month period of time. Now, I think that you probably couldn't say, okay, here's your plan without the Article 78 decision, but I am able to go up and get the approvals, do everything other than probably start the project or submit a building permit. So I'm going to hope to do those in concert together and push everything over the finish line just post Article 78. So I'm really thinking that the actual start time of the project is going to be in excess of 12 months from now, because we're only going to be able to take on, I can't pay for full architectural drawings in that time because there's still a decent amount of risk. Can I flesh out all the concepts, figure out, dumpster placement materials? And it'll be over a series of meetings, like collaborative meetings together with you guys to get to that point. And SHPO will be opining in the background as well as our our architect, which I'm not positive who we're going to ultimately use. Right now, Chris Costanza is working on it from 9x30 Design.
Where would you have delivery trucks go?
I don't,
Trucks, where would they park?
oh, for when people are move in, move out?
Or FedEx, UPS?
What I'm hoping, and I know we have this egress in is about 20 feet wide, so I do feel like the site lends itself to kind of pulling in, doing, some type of drop off, even if they're blocking a portion of this 20-foot wide aisleway. We've even theorized, could it be two directions? I think it would have to be extended by 10 feet onto this green space area, which I don't know the impacts to green space on the property or what that does. But if that could be two directional, it would make things a little bit easier. But it would be.
You have the back, right?
Yep, so we would be funneling through from Colebrook, or, if they came in through Washington, pulled up and exited that way. And actually, I think at the 20 feet wide, the engineer does look like it's showing two directions. To me, it seems small for two directions, but, okay, so he is proposing, and he did put this on here, widen driveway to 20 feet. So I think current is 16, which would only permit single traffic, but then if we go to 20, then we're able to get two-sided traffic. And then the cross-access easement, it shows a 25-foot proposed access easement, at least on the plan that I'm looking at. I apologize if it's not on that one.
It is on ours.
3 or 4.
But the idea would be to be able to access and pull in and use our two-way entry to the front of the building to accommodate that. Now, commercial trucks, if it is we put XYZ business in there that's taking deliveries, there's obviously not going to be a loading dock on the property. It's in the lower level of the property, which the elevator is all the way around in the back. So that is going to be an operational issue associated with the user. But I know that where we are placing the elevator, we are going to be able to provide ADA access. There may be some masonry work and things like that to be able to eliminate the curbing, so we're getting in on grade. But
Well, and you'll probably have the same sort of package room for your tenants. I mean, they're not going to leave stuff out in front of the door, right?
yes, and most of our properties, we do have a package room, or it's kind of funny because FedEx, everyone gives the door code to UPS, FedEx, and the Postal Service. So they enter and they place the packages in front of people's doors, even though we have a parcel room. So they avoid that, and we do have a centralized mailbox on the interior of the building, which
That must be great for the other tenants who don't give out the code.
I know. Well, it's sort of and I didn't realize this was a thing until I saw, I was setting up my Amazon for my house, and it's oh, do you want to leave the driver your door code? And it's interesting. So that's an option. It's something that we really can't control outside of the other security features that we have in the building. So
Can you tell me where the elevator is?
right where you circled
Right
is
there.
proposed. And I think so it's showed on this as a lift. So that area that you have, the area that you have highlighted is right there. So this is a place that it's able to hit every floor within the
That is.
interior
It's also gonna be
structure.
the freight elevator, more or less, to move furniture up and down?
It's
too?
everything.
Okay.
Now, we are keeping all of our stairwells, so we're hoping that, the elevator itself isn't going to be able to move a 15-foot couch. It's just not reality. They're about 7.5 feet wide by 8 feet tall or so, 9 feet. So we have all the existing stairwells that we're maintaining that, because of school, are really wide. So we're hoping that people are, and if our property management team needs to help out and help people move stuff in, we're willing.
Well, I was just thinking, this is going to be kind of tight if you're going to be using the breezeway as your main entrance to get into the elevator, right? You're going to have to move furniture through all of that too, so.
If we have to use that as our primary, the entrance on the other side has a pretty wide double door. So, and then we have the stairwell access if they're going to go that way. This is more for passenger transportation as opposed to moving. But given the size of the building, we cannot do two elevators. The cost is
you-
just prohibitive.
Can you get from one side to the other to the elevator?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. But you have to go on stairs. That's the only thing, is if you're on this side, the way the building is set up, you would have to go downstairs, go back up, and then get on the elevator. But from a furniture moving perspective, the stairs are extremely wide. So I think it'd be nice, and the hallways themselves are something that we cannot contract the size of the hallways of it. So,
Guy my age would love to move a couch up 3 flights of stairs.
well, that's why I was we're going to have some on-site property management to be able to help. But generally, even the occupants of our buildings now are, they're moving the majority of the things that they can, and then they have a few things that go by movers, or
I was
they
going to
grab
say, you hire movers, that's what
Yeah.
they're for.
Yeah.
So,
So on the
It's all love seats. It's a love seat only building.
mechanical side, the gas line you're maintaining, but
We
just
are going to maintain the
potentially
gas,
that.
yeah.
But looking at the domestic water called out, it's only a 2-inch service to this building. Seems
It's
undersized.
we're going to have to bring, I think, depending on the pressure, and I don't know the answer to that because that was another thing that we asked the county about,
Yep.
and we didn't get a pressure test back on that area. So 2-inch for this number of units, you're probably going to be slight. We're definitely not going to be able to put in sprinklers, which we are planning for the building. So our plan would be to at least add a sprinkler service, probably a 4-inch.
Yep.
And then if we have to upgrade the domestic at that time, then we'll do it in a common trench and at least, so we would plan to update the service.
Sanitary sizing, has that been reviewed
I think
as
they're
well?
only a 4-inch sanitary, so the number of bathrooms that are currently there, 4 inches, I put that up to 50, you're right at the limit,
Yeah.
but if that has to be expanded, I would propose doing that all in the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your stormwater requirements are, if there's separate storm, or I'd imagine it, if it's just running off of the building, but right now it's a flat roof that drains internally. So if there is a 4-inch drain for storm, then I think that would be adequate for the building. But one of the things that would be adequate, but I do feel that we need to update probably go to a 4-inch water,
Yep.
bring in a 4-inch fire protection, go to a 6-inch sanitary, and then hopefully retain the 4-inch storm if it's existing.
And then how about RG&E?
We're gonna have to do a service upgrade. So I think we have,
Can they do it?
I don't know because I haven't submitted an engineering ticket, but I don't see the demand being a ton more. We are adding the electric heat, but those are fairly high efficiency units. They're not quite as high if the ducted heat pumps are slightly higher, but slightly higher than like a mini split, which would be
Right.
kind of a cassette head. Those are a very small power draw, but I think we're probably only at like a 400 or 600 amp service right now. So there could potentially be a need to upgrade to a 3-phase and some more power to accommodate the building. And I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'm dealing with a situation in Henrietta that they can't build apartments.
It's something that I know now is still taking a year to get the equipment in if you do need a transformer. So that's probably one of the,
18 months.
18
and
months.
They're buying them from Spain, stealing them from another job.
that's what somebody told me. They go out and
And they're
put them on
$17
on
million.
reserve. Yikes.
So you were approved by ZBA for 5 commercial units in the cellar, right? But the new plan is just 2 larger ones or something like 3?
Yeah, we went out to, so I think it would be a maximum of 2 because that's how the
They're
space
just
is
gonna be
currently.
bigger because that's how you have to allocate.
Or if we have a single tenant,
Who
then
takes all of it?
takes all of it. Now, the answer that I don't know is, I as a landlord will not be further subdividing the space, but does that mean that a tenant cannot build some internal subdivision if it
Right.
was classrooms, if it was, a therapy space or a doctor's office or office spaces? And that I don't know the answer to right now. I've not encountered this before.
So as far as our site planning, we would be considering the plans as they're proposing, so it would be like the possibility of 2 commercial tenants, or should it be considered up to the possibility of 5? I mean, it's also hard to judge because it really depends greatly on.
Nebulous.
what the tenant is.
Right.
Well, at least what's coming to me initially would be that you all say this goes forward, preliminary, and then final, and to potentially have in the resolution that the applicant return when they have, identified a tenant. Because, like we've been talking about, some things may change. It's probably not going to be the most major changes. That's going to be already covered. However, obviously, depending on the tenant, it will be the parking requirements, as well as if there's going to be, I don't know, any signage, if there's going to
Oh,
be
right.
deliveries, if there's going to be, if the circulation is going to change in some capacity, they need a
Or if it's a
different.
restaurant.
Yeah. So at least that's where my mind is going initially of, okay, we're essentially approving
The residential.
whatever the list of the things are, including the residential, and that the applicant
Anything will
must
come back for
reappear.
commercial.
Yeah.
Well, and will they have to secure additional variances for a signage and a residential?
Yeah, my
Yes.
guess would be yes, because
Right.
it's a
I
residential.
would think so too, right? So
What
we
if-
might
what if the
actually not
sign-
have much to do with it, right?
Sure.
What if the signage is on the door though, and it's not, I don't
I
know.
think that it would.
We're
still
hitting
have
every
to
gray
go-
area.
Yeah.
I understand too. I'm learning a lot on this.
A lot of it's probably gonna,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, a lot of it's probably gonna come down to how the use variance was granted and
That's
how
what I
that
wanna
was
see,
worded, yeah.
what it says, because if there's any restrictions that, well,
Yeah.
you would know if you have any restrictions.
Oh, in terms of the variance, I mean,
Commercial spaces can be allowed for, is there any?
well, we do have deed restrictions from, the diocese and parish, so I think that there's a list of businesses that cannot go in there. So I do think
Like a
alcohol,
synagogue.
I think it's more of like alcohol or,
Place of worship, so
You know,
I don't know
things
why that would be
like-
restricted,
I-
but
alcohol or things like that. I mean, I'm kind of envisioning like a pretty benign use,
put a
like,
smoke shop in there. and
Right.
put a, I'd like to know if those.
A restaurant or
Can we ask for that
obviously.
list of what's prohibited, just so we know?
Sure, you can request whatever information you'd like from the
yeah,
applicant.
I
well, wouldn't it
honestly
have to
don't know the
comply
answer
with
to
the
it.
residential? No, because they have a special use permit,
it all
right?
depends on
So
how
they
the
can
use
do
variance was.
anything,
No, but
basically.
he has some deeds with the church. that
Oh, yes, in our contract, there is restrictions that will be placed upon subdivision.
If you don't mind sharing
Yes.
it, just so
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, it's mostly around like bars or, like
The 200 foot
seedier
rule.
places type
Yeah.
things, I mean, a
careful,
smoke shop would
be
be,
careful.
yeah, I don't know what that means, I don't
200
know.
foot rule would kill your bar anyway, so. that
What
wouldn't
church,
matter.
right, that you can't, yes. So that's nowhere near,
There's a lot of things you can't then.
Right.
Probably will.
So-
It'd be good to know what that is. Now, so I got a question, it might go to staff too. There's a lot of questions about whether this is gonna be market rate or subsidized. And what's the,
it's market rate.
This is
Yeah.
market rate.
Yeah.
This is-
market rate?
You could look at those apartments on the interior, you know what their
I got
market
it.
rate.
Yeah.
So here's my question, I think it's more a staff question. So I think there's a lot of concern from the public about that, and I don't know how far we can go, and I'd like to know. I think we can't do much, right?
Well,
However-
that's technically a use, correct? Yeah, so,
But I'd like to be able to tell the public that, so that at least we can let them know that we're just dealing with the site plan.
sure, absolutely. When this,
One more question.
okay.
So we've run into situations where we've allowed residents, I'll use the mall as an example. We were told one thing, and then all of a sudden, there's all this trouble because the government forced them to do something else. I don't know all the details, the type of residents that can go in there. So I think the public wants to know if they change down the line and it's not market rate, do they have to get any kind of an approval, or it's just
Well,
whatever the law allows?
It's, in this case, it's what the use variance says, right? And so, under the assumption that the decision stands, if the use variance is for 16 multifamily units and commercial on the ground floor, that is not dictating who or what kind of apartments those are.
For example, if he didn't get his SHPO, but wanted to go and talk to community and housing to get another type of assistance that would fall within that parameter that they were offering, then there's nothing to stop him from doing the same 16.
I just think it should be clear, because I think the public has probably a lot of questions on that. at least.
Sure, I mean, I think that we can put together a statement for the chair outlining what the planning board scope is and isn't.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Just so that when the questions come up, they can know this isn't the board to ask.
Yeah, my dream, like if we could execute this, I would love, well, not only for its market rate and we don't do any type of affordable housing, we're not set up as that type of business and whatnot, or even a size of a company that could do things like that. But I would love to be able to condo them off at some point in the future. So kind of in the back of my mind, thinking that at some point, now the condo would be an option here, but there is no way to offset the cost of construction. The cost of construction exceeds the market price of housing. And until you own them for a period of time, I don't know what the break even is, 7 years, 8 years, it takes a while, and that's with tax credits to kind of get back to square one. Real estate's a long-term game. So I would love to be able, because this is my hometown and I care about the community, to potentially sell them as condos, if that's feasible, to go through that process at some point in the future. I've never done that, so I don't know what's in it. I know there's some hefty legal fees associated with it, and petitions with New York State, but we're kind of designing them with the way that this could be a condo at some point in the future.
Everything you do, market rate?
Yes. Yeah, we don't have any subsidies, any residential subsidies. But I will say, like, our general product is,
I can ask here, but I can't ask in the meeting.
oh, okay. Yeah. We've been pretty open about it.
And like also on the same hand, like the preservation office is requiring you to keep.
Two questions.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, ask your question again, I'm sorry. Oh,
the preservation board or the preservation office is requiring you to keep the basement open so that people can envision the original historic use.
Yeah.
But they're not requiring you to make a commercial space. However, you can because you have the use you're completely entitled to because you have the use variance.
Right.
But there's also still like keeping the space open doesn't necessarily. I mean, it could be a community room. Of course, it's not income generating. But
Yeah.
I understand why you needed the variant. I mean, this is. You have to recoup the
Yeah.
costs, and so
Yeah,
having
that's why I
commercial
proposed
space
that
versus
way.
in the basement allows it to stay open, meet the requirements of SHPO. But there are other ways to meet the openness requirement by SHPO other than using commercial use. But you may do that because you have.
Right, but you're exactly right that when I knew the rough parameters of what SHPO would want just because of my experience with them and having Chris Brandt as a resource because he knows the stuff like the back of his hand. So the request was for that reason. It's not because I prefer. We actually have maybe only 5% of our total real estate portfolio is commercial space. It's not something I like as much. I don't. It's not like a preference, but some buildings you're forced into doing, commercial. But I still think about it as some type of like, artist space or event space or art gallery. Like I really want a use that's cohesive with our residents because when 85% of the building is residential and those are the people that are texting you at 10 o'clock at night to say, I hear a noise, and we want to be responsive to that. So, and we are that kind of company that answers the phone at 10 o'clock at night when one of our residents hears a noise or sees a door open and things like that. So
you don't have a gym or anything like that?
there is a proposed fitness area in the revised plans. We're probably 500 square feet or so, as well as a couple different, that is in the lower level.
Yeah, okay.
And there was like a highlighted area that was kind of like a space that we couldn't utilize, which I think was a late addition of a bathroom maybe, because this building actually had a level added on top of it already. So yeah, the first
change
building
of
was,
color.
yes. In the top, like cornice used to have a lot more detail in it, and it was flattened out.
Tile roof and everything.
Yeah, right. And we actually just found some of the original plans, which were interesting. The addition was done by J. Foster Warner, which is a pretty prominent architect in Rochester. I don't know the architects who designed the original building off the top of my head, but 1923, and then the addition was done not too much after. I want to say 30s, maybe. So it's cool. We definitely appreciate the old building, details and preserve everything that we possibly can on the buildings. So it's meaningful to us.
I think this is the first application I've ever seen somebody's going to restore the old windows.
No, I know.
I thought,
But when he said he was going to SHPO, I'm like, I don't have to worry about metal windows going.
right. Yeah, we actually we did a building downtown from the 1870s, and we quoted the window restoration from. There's not a lot of people that do it at a commercial level, and we ended up doing it ourselves because it was a very big sum. So we ended up making these 1870s windows. We had 2 or 3 operable windows per apartment, taking them and restoring the weights and putting in new chains for them and the sashes and reusing the hardware after boiling it down and getting all the paint off it. So it's definitely a labor of love, but it's
And
what we do.
If people like you, we could get more people on the trades.
I think John
Yeah.
was going to-
Yep, just 2 quick comments. One was regarding Nate's comment regarding the upsizing of the water surface.
Yep.
If that's done and you need a hot box for the RPZ or anything like that on the exterior, just show the location on the plans and what the
Okay.
exterior of that will look like. And then regarding the driveway that we're going to be widening on the east side coming in off Colebrook, looks like we got a home that's sitting pretty close to that, so look into some 6-foot solid fencing in that area for headlights and whatnot.
For this house that's here?
Yep.
Okay. Wow, okay.
Yeah, if you didn't have to widen that, I would be happy. Because that's a lot of grass you're getting rid of, and all of a sudden now we have stormwater now that we're having to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's currently 16 feet, but I'm not
That's why I'm
positive.
thinking if you just made that one way,
I'm not uncomfortable with keeping it one way. I just was like, when we were talking
you
about
have a
traffic patterns
daycare-
and stuff,
it'll make it a lot easier to control traffic.
it does seem nice because if you're entering that way and then you're, flowing out through either of the two options, depending on which direction you're going, I don't dislike that as a plan. I mean, putting up a 6-foot solid fence across the way. Well, it looks like there's some like little fenestration posts here right now. I'm not sure if they're showing disturbed area, a fence already, but, oh yeah, it's saying, a silt fence or, this is just for during construction. Yeah.
So any questions, any more questions for us? I mean, we asked you a ton. So
Well, now I just have like a to-do list, which is not atypical to these projects, but, I think I could probably figure out, with the next submission, if we are going to move formally. I mean, none of these things are unreasonable requests or things that we haven't like thought about, but I'm going to have to do some more investigation. So I would say the next submission would be more of like maybe 2 months away, 3 months.
you can always come back to a workshop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another sketch plan or even a workshop before.
I think that's a good idea.
You'll do a workshop before you come
Yeah.
anyways. So.
Yep.
It probably would be in your interest to do another sketch plan since it's this far away.
Yeah, I think I really want to focus on the utilities and kind of flesh that out, and that's going to be a big deal with this. We had, trying to get those marked out prior to our meeting. It didn't go well because it was, between town with the sewer, it was just too many different governing bodies, and then RG&E marked stuff in the wrong places. But there is this utility bunker here that we could possibly reuse if we did need to bring water service or, something like that through and into the building. But working on the landscaper plan, thinking about the dumpster, looking at this rooftop addition and the lighting plan, which is normally done by our architect, just had very little time prior to the submission. The bike racks, I'm looking at some of the pedestrian safety. What we have done when we had parking lot to parking lot was more of creating marked areas and maybe altering the traction or surface of that traction. We didn't put any handrails because they're still being used as roads, but marking that and, highlighting with some lighting. Snow storage within our property, I know that's a requirement, and I apologize if that didn't make the plan, or if it is some type of shared snow storage where we're able to push it all the way to the back tree line. Because I think they do have a little bit of tree line back there.
Take it all out.
Yeah,
In order to
dumpster enclosure.
In order to get your variance, did you prepare any numbers on like traffic counts or anything like that? Not that I'm concerned about it, but I think that other people may be. And so just to anticipate an argument, especially comparing it to the last use, you should
Right.
really come out ahead, I would imagine.
At least, there was so much going on with the variance process that wasn't like discussed at length, but the research that I did on the site, and I was able to talk to somebody that had a traffic study, they weren't able to provide it, didn't give it to me. I think Don Lasher was the previous applicant that did have a traffic study prepared as part of his rezone, but some of the historic use of the site was 2,500 visitors weekly to that, so that site, and
I bring it up because
again-
I think that it could be helpful to the case
Yeah.
that you're trying to make.
it may have been a traffic jam on Sundays or, peak times, and that site can accommodate, 1,000 people, or it's designed to do that. I'm not saying, hey, we should compare it to a 2,000 peak to now, and in today's reality, where at that peak, maybe most families had one car. I know growing up, we had one car, so, and now families have 2 or 3. So, I
I
can,
suspect that even if you compare it to stepping stones,
yeah.
it would have less traffic generated. I just feel like it might be a topic that comes up at public input, and so if we had, numbers to point to, it might be helpful.
Yeah, so the last time what I did is try to avoid the pain that, 5,000, 7,500 was I was trying to do like a little bit of internal generated math on it, but I think I could probably get the last study and see what we could do to get it updated as part of this. Right, and I need to talk to him. I've only spoke with people that he has worked with. I haven't gotten a chance to speak with them directly. Oh, really?
Also, traffic is part of seeker as well. So,
Okay.
If you don't have any other questions for us, I mean, feel free to come back for the sketch.
Yeah, what I'll probably do is I'm gonna get this tightened up, come back. You know, I generally feel comfortable with sort of like a floor plan or at least the massing of the addition, and, you know, I feel comfortable with the amount of commercial space that we're ultimately gonna have, but all the refinement on kind of lighting, landscaping, dumpster placement, snow removal, utilities, we're replacing those things through bikes, pedestrian safety, things like that. Then,
We love the outside of the house.
okay. No, I do too. I love working with these brick buildings. This is actually your copy. Now you're gonna ask me to fold it back the way I had it. I'm sorry.
Sometimes too is when you come back, bring pictures of
Okay.
your other projects.
Yeah.
Just kind of gives us a feel.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you find this valuable?
Yeah, not every board kind of does this sort of like working session, so, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect, and it's kind of cool that we can just, yeah. Right, yeah.
Checked it. So,
So I think it's nice to be able to have this feedback prior to a public meeting, so I appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next case, please.
Our third case is a sketch plan conference, request by Colliers Engineering and Design, acting as agent for Providence Housing, for sketch plan conference for the construction of 12 two-story apartment buildings totaling 95 dwelling units and one single-story community building with site-related improvements on premises 2590 Culver Road in an R5.
Good evening. My name is Mark Greisberger. I'm the Executive Director of Providence Housing. Applicant. With me is our Rob Cade, our developer. And out in the audience is our civil engineer and our architect. I'm here just really to introduce you to the project. This concept is affordable housing. It's called workforce affordable housing. It is not market rate housing. It's 96 units of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units with a separate community center in the property to service. It'll be the rental office. It'll be a community facility for the residents. There'll be an activity center, a kitchen, a meeting space for residents. There'll be a laundry facility. There'll be a small workout room. We have a lot of flexibility what could go in there, but it is going to be a full-time manager. We'll have full-time maintenance technicians at the property. The idea came from a conversation about 4 years ago with a gentleman named Steve Smith at St. Anne's. One of their big problems in keeping personnel and attracting personnel was the wages they were paying their dietary staff, their facility staff, their nurses' aides, made it impossible to find affordable housing anywhere in the town of Arundequoit. And that piqued my interest. Providence is an affordable housing developer. We're not a public housing authority. That's somewhat different. But we do affordable housing. We rent to people primarily making 50, 60, 70, 80% of area median income. That's a HUD number that's published annually. For a single person in Monroe County, which is the target thing, it's well over 50,000. Obviously, as family size goes up, that number goes up. We would like the mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms for people who are working in healthcare facilities, our first responders, young teachers, people who work in retail up and down Ridge Road. That's the market we're looking to attract. These are people with jobs. These are our people who work in your community. That's the market we're going to be attracting. Well, we will hopefully rent somewhere. Rents will be between $800, $1,200 a month, based on your income as well. There's a percentage. Your being the individual applicant, obviously not yours.
How are you going to assure that there's going to be healthcare workers only in here?
We are not going to make that assurance. they will be a target population. We can never make
I
that
know that they
assurance.
can't, that's why I'm asking the question.
Oh, do you want me to say well, I'm not going to comply with fair housing laws? Is that what you're insisting on?
No, I'm just,
No, I didn't
because
think
that's
you
the way
would.
you're presenting it. and I
No,
just
no,
wanna
I,
make sure that
that's the market.
conversation came from,
But I want you to understand that the residents
I get
do
it.
pay rent. Well, I'm not sure you do, because you wouldn't have asked the question. Just like his initial question is it going to be market rate housing? This is going to be housing that's going to be for people who live in your community.
yeah.
So do you have other,
Yeah, well,
in Rondequoit?
yes, Providence redeveloped the old St. Salome facility
Yeah.
in two phases. There was an initial phase of 45 units and then a subsequent phase of 70. St. Salome's is over 15 years old. The Durand project is
That would be
probably
the
7 or
the
6,
connected
7.
townhouses.
And I met a number of you people when we were at least doing the Durand. I was here for St. Salome's as well, but a number of you I remember from the Durand project. We have a history with the town. We are here. We're physically present. We have full-time managers at Durand, St. Salome's. That's actually operated as, it's actually two projects operated as one integrated project, I'll be honest with you. It works that way.
So in an effort to kind of focus on what you're building rather than who you're renting to, can you walk us through the site plan?
Well, I would prefer to give that to our architects and engineers, but the site plan is, as you see it, it's the existing Wambach property. We started on this, we've had the property rezoned at the town board level from R1 to R5. The town board was the lead agency, they were the seeker agency. We did do a full-blown traffic study, that's all part of the public record. The town was, quite frankly, the town board was excited about the concept and approved the the rezoning unanimously. We then came here, ideally, thinking we're on a fast track until we started also doing at the same time environmental. And that's when we learned that the project was built, it was actually quite a significant gully, which you see all up and down, both 104 and
Yeah.
590, and it had been filled in by the Wambachs. And it was unstable, so we've had, that put a kibosh, that put this big pause on everything. We have applied for and been accepted into the Brownfields program, which will provide credits that will enable us to get out the bush and put in solid foundational material that'll let us build on the site. That's what took so long, I guess, is why there's 3 or 4 year hiatus. And,
So to,
go ahead.
Hi, this is Rob Kane, CST Housing. I live on Harvington Drive in Rondequoit. So to give a little bit more programmatic context to the site plan in front of you, trying to bring this application or sketch plan application back to site plan, you'll have an enter through a signalized light off Culver just at the Quickly's entrance and exit. That'll have a shared access agreement that'll then, before come into the site, where then you'll be welcomed by a clubhouse with well-placed screening, playground area, typical amenities for this type of development. As you drive down what I would call the asphalt spine, you'll have break-off parking areas for the 12 8-plex buildings. That'll all be 2 stories in nature. Our architect has brought some precedent imageries from another development that's exactly the same type of floor plan and building. So you'll see that from Joe Gibbons at SWBR. As you kind of meander down the driveway, you'll come to a loop. Justin with Colliers will walk you guys through the specifics as it relates to fire access apparatus, bioretention areas, green practices such as solar generation on the roofs, to a combination of retention and detention pond areas. And then looking at other multimodal transportation options that consider bicycles, public transit on Culver Road, and then also parking counts. The goal here is to really be fully compliant with R5 zoning. No variance is required. And so with that, I'll pass the microphone over here to Justin.
Yeah, I mean, it's our intent is to comply with all the zoning, all the stormwater regulations. That's basically what we're looking to do. I don't know if there's any questions on anything specific on the plan.
I have a question about environmental. I believe part of this parcel is in an EPOD. Is that so? I think it's woodlot. I remember going through this with,
Part of it is a wood lot at some,
yeah, the parcel, I forget the name of the development.
Up here, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, it was, what, happened was that seemed like they came up with the EPODs in the 80s or something like that, early 90s. Woodlot was one of them. This was designated as woodlot. If I remember correctly, it's like right behind the houses on, what is that, Hulda? Yeah, it kind of like goes down along here. I could be wrong. You'll want to check on that.
No, we can definitely look into that.
further in the northeast corner of that property as it starts to taper into the
So,
590.
if this is in fact true, then we would want to try to do whatever we can in order to preserve what remains. That's the thing. A lot of it seems to have vanished in between the time that it was delineated a woodlot and now. So that gave, I think, a little bit of flexibility with us in terms of, if I remember that last application, we were like, well, it was designated as woodlot. The woodlot is gone now, so,
We never got this far on any of this kind of stuff, though, with this project.
What's
We
the
never got
entity that
anywhere
designates
near
that?
this.
that was the town.
It's a local designation, so it's essentially like an environmental protection overlay district. And if you go to the Irondequoit website, I believe there's maps on there, and the code outlines the requirements for each of those. And lucky you, this board approves those or reviews those, so that would be part of your
And it's
site plan application.
EPOD?
EPOD.
Thank you.
Usually when we have an application that has an EPOD on it, the developer will do like an overlay map and they will lay them over one another so we can see where
And it is a
in fact
separate
they,
application to us.
go
And what year?
lie on
Yep.
top of each other.
And what year was that approved?
I
figured you knew
I
already.
believe it was like in the late 80s or early
Oh, wow.
90s that
Okay.
they did these EPODs. Don't quote me on that, but it wasn't like a million years ago. But
Okay.
and so we try to like preserve what we can of that. And I remember that was one of the things that changed the entrance to the senior housing complex. So they originally wanted to, there were a number of factors. One of them was that they wanted to run that road out to Culver, and they wanted to run it right through what was remaining of the EPOD. So there were a number of factors that changed that.
Gotta stop you. It wasn't an EPOD there. It was a recommendation that we made after taking
Yes,
walking.
in conjunction with that as well.
Right.
But one of the factors was that it kept, preserved a portion of that EPOD. But
I would
do
double
rem-
check it
Yeah,
to make sure.
Yeah, I
that
would
it was-
certainly double check it.
It'll come as a separate application to this board also, but staff should be able to walk you through
Yes.
that.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
is
can
there a
we-
bike lane on this road?
No. On Calder?
No. On the road they're building. I mean, that's a road. I don't care. You can call it a driveway, you can call it whatever you want. It's a road.
There's not currently a bike lane.
Cool, that'd be something I would like to see.
So I got a question. I'm trying to remember what we did about this emergency access to Hilda Road or Hilda Park.
Hulda,
Yeah, we did something, I thought, where they had to put some.
it's on the back, it's on the east part of the complex itself,
Right here.
and it goes out into that road that dead ends.
Oh, over here?
Yeah.
This one. But how do they get from here? This,
They don't.
you can't get there from here. What do you mean? I thought there was, we were gonna put something in,
There's nothing
ground.
connecting these two
No,
properties.
but I thought, I'm trying to go from memory. I thought we
Okay.
said, you could put those things in the ground so a truck could drive over.
Yeah, we do have grassed pavers
Oh,
for the emergency access
Instead
that
of
goes to the west
Paving
end.
it all over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep,
And that's on the north part as
That's
we
this
head
north,
north.
right?
Yeah.
That would be east.
it's off that map. It's to the east.
It's over here, huh?
Yeah,
I don't remember now.
It's more,
Oh, he's pointing
yeah, there
to
you
it.
go, right there.
Okay, so over there is where we have it.
yeah,
But how does that help the folks in the middle? It doesn't.
it doesn't.
They can't get from here to there to get out for an emergency.
Of course not. No, it does not help them at all. But if this site has emergency access to the driveway to Hulda, that helps them.
Well, that's what I'm asking, what this is. So what are you proposing here?
We would like to have access for emergency purposes off onto Hulda, under the driveway to RMI that goes into Hulda.
But are you proposing the same kind of thing we did over there, or you're proposing an actual driveway?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but we can propose whatever you want,
Well, I'd
whatever
like to
makes it
preserve
better.
as much
So,
of
yeah, I agree.
the landscape as possible.
If the question is,
Do a favor.
if the, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, grass paver connection, emergency egress only.
And are these folks in favor of that?
That emergency vehicles. So it's something we have to talk to them about.
Okay.
We haven't had that
Yeah, we're
conversation
trying to
yet.
discuss.
And there would be pedestrian conductivity then between the two projects?
We're showing a sidewalk at the moment, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that pedestrian conductivity would be a sidewalk.
Correct. It would be.
It doesn't exactly,
Right over here is what they're talking about. Yeah, there's another project right here, and the only egress and ingress for that project is off of Hulda.
So this would mostly be for emergency vehicles?
Remember this.
Okay.
It's coming back.
I
It was
personally,
before COVID.
I like the grass pavers
Bad
because then it
call.
preserves the landscape. So,
Done before gates, it's really nice to just have it for emergency vehicles only.
how's it working for that? I haven't gone to look. We'll have to go look. For over here.
Hopefully
the
they
spring
never
will be
have to
good,
use
yeah.
it,
Right.
right?
The grass was growing last I knew, but that was
Yeah.
in the spring.
Well,
Yeah.
I
especially in
mean,
this
I was
one.
over there, Bernie, doing some walking for some other occasion, and I can tell you, it looks similar to when we first looked at the project before the building went in. I mean, you could still see the building, but it's not, there's nothing there that would strike me that would be bothersome to a
One more
neighbor.
question. So we did a lot with, when Quickly's went
Yeah.
out to put a berm, if I recall, between this and the other building. That's there, I believe, right? But now you're going to add additional landscaping, or you got to build it?
Yes, the plan is to provide. The plan is to provide the required landscaping and berming to screen the area.
I think they should put access directly to that car wash.
It's getting late. It's getting late. Any other questions?
Free car washes, boy.
Yeah, obviously, we love the outside of buildings, so we're gonna wanna know what kind of materials you're using.
Yep.
There's gotta be, I know that the folks that built the Quicklys purchased all of this land. You guys are not intending on having any signing for this, right? I mean, it's just, correct.
That's correct. I mean, typically at the entrance, it'll be at the clubhouse, per standards we have.
Just say clubhouse or.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
members only.
Yeah, leasing office.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the road frontage is all Quickly's, and we don't have the frontage to
and
do
you
so.
engaged in discussion at least to have access to this?
That's, it's a formalized access agreement. It's already in place.
Okay. Did we do that?
I don't know, that precedes me.
I thought we did.
It was part of the subdivision.
I would imagine you
Yeah.
have to, because you can't have, what they call them,
Landlocked.
thank you.
Yeah. What's the elevation on this clubhouse? I don't recall seeing it on the plan.
Joe, do you have, Joe Gibbons, our architects, with us. Do you have an elevation of the clubhouse that you could share?
Is it one story, two story?
Make sure you're near the microphone when you talk.
Here.
Join the party, I guess. All right. See, but here, take mine.
Oh, great, thank you. Hi, I'm Joe Gibbons from SWBR. The clubhouse is just a one-story building. The other buildings are all two-story buildings.
I drove down Whitlock and I noticed that the yards of the houses along here, there's quite a bit of a slope. And I don't know how that will affect, I just had some concern for those neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah, so as we work through the site grading, we'll make sure we're accommodating all the site grades and, keeping those areas good.
So one thing I like is the road doesn't go into their backyards. It's into the middle of the
Well,
complex.
that's why.
To give a little bit more to Justin's comments, the bioretention stormwater management areas are dual purpose to kind of alleviate some of the residents' kind of grading issues, but then also to serve for the obviously the housing development. Go ahead.
When we do the stormwater management, can you show us if any of these are gonna hold water or not? Just to make sure that the perk rate is, God, all these terms that I learned ever since I joined the board.
Yeah, so we'll do perk testing for all of the bioretention areas. None of them should hold water for more than 48 to 72 hours. They will be dry practices.
Yeah, that's going to be helpful to these folks right
Yep.
here, because they're not going to want mosquitoes and all of that.
Yep.
Do you have excess parking here?
I think we actually have 32 bank spots.
Do you have exactly the number you need, I hope?
Yes, exactly,
more.
192.
Okay.
We're
Because
banking,
that looks like a lot of parking to me, but,
we're banking 32 of them. So we're showing that we could build in the future if we need them to bring us up to code. We're showing 160 at the moment and banking 32 to
okay.
get us to 192.
With the banking, you won't need a variance.
I haven't worked through that yet, but I thought the planning board had some
I think we do have some discretion
discretion on parking
on
requirements.
parking requirements.
If we
Yeah, I
proved,
have to look into it a little bit further, but
On projects like this, I think we do.
Do you feel that there's additional opportunity for banking?
good question for Rep.
Hi again. So perhaps, yeah, we'll have to do an internal survey. Most times, and most folks we do work with, usually you see about less than a 1 parking ratio per unit. But in this particular case, since we have 3 and 2 bedrooms, we'll want to make sure we give that a good hard look with Providence's portfolio and what their parking utilization rates are.
Sure.
So it's,
Any
we have to-
opportunity to reduce it,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
as long as they're banked.
Can't stand
would
asphalt
be-
Cs.
I think I would support that.
Do you guys anticipate obviously this is built for families. What do you plan on doing for school buses? Are you going to have the kids walk to Culver, or what are you doing?
I think we'll have to look through that with engineering to make sure the site can accommodate school buses. It is at a signalized light. I think it really depends on when they do the turning radius of the school bus to see if the site can accommodate it.
Well, and what about building a bus shelter for the kids?
Yeah, at the top.
You could do it for RGRTA as
Yeah.
well as for the school kids.
It is a long way to
It
kind
is.
of go out there.
Yeah, it's a long site too, so we're definitely gonna be looking into
When
if you
I was
can
a
accommodate.
kid, we walked
A lot of
both
cold days.
ways.
Thanks for bringing up the shelter point though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a good solution as opposed to driving buses all the way in there. It's probably less than a half a mile, would be my guess.
To Culver Road.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, but it's cold and windy, and kids get the bus when it's dark a lot
60
of
degrees
times.
in February.
yeah.
I think
Where do you live that it's cold and windy and dark?
So what about lighting? What are you looking at for lighting on the site?
Anything that we'll build is dark sky compliant. And then for site lighting, it's really based on, you guys do a biometric plan or whatever it's called, a photometric.
Yeah.
On the buildings? Or-
Yeah, so for the buildings, so the way the buildings are designed, there's 8 units per building, 4 down and 4 up. And everybody gets their own entrance. So typically, there's an overhang where the entrance is, and it'll be a light in the soffit underneath there. So it wouldn't be anything that's like broadcasting out. It'll be kind of down, just at the entry points only.
Yeah, you heard us say that we love the outside of buildings a lot, so that's
Yep.
sort of the stuff we're looking for still.
Sure.
And bike racks,
What's your refuse plan? I mean, there's no dumpsters noted here. Is it toters at every unit? Is it gonna be dumpster central?
I'm pretty sure, well, typically they do totes, I believe, correct, Mark? Yeah. So we usually use totes, but we could provide access to those totes and show where those are located on the plan when we submit for submission.
will they be in groups of 8, or will they be in 8 separate ones?
A detail we should probably work out. I don't know for sure yet, but yeah.
Because that brings up snow storage too.
What do
You don't
they
have
need
that
snow storage?
designated.
Yeah, we don't show any snow storage. I mean, I would envision, based on the way the parking is set up, that the snow storage would happen at the end of each of the kind of finger parking lots.
Be nice
So
to call it.
we'll designate that area, make sure that doesn't conflict with landscaping and stormwater practices.
And I do kind of remember, it was kind of steep over here, wasn't it?
It's very steep on the
Yes.
north side of the property.
So what do you think? Yeah, what are you thinking of doing at the end of the parking lots to ensure cars don't?
I think we're pretty flat to our property line. We're pretty flat to the property line, yeah. They've just put in a new electric line through there, and there's a actual road that RG&E built that actually RMI built it for RG&E to use for maintenance, so it's a stone gravel road.
Yeah.
If you traverse the site, you can see it. So it's right on the very northern edge of
You're
our
not worried
parcel.
about?
No.
Is there more than just elevation that we're dealing with a brownfield?
I was wondering, does it got?
There's a whole host of issues with it, so there's...
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Garden, they can't dig in the soil.
Yeah, so based on the track, we'll end up falling on whether it's unrestricted residential, restricted residential, or another track that doesn't apply to multifamily. We'll be looking at a cut fill analysis, pulling out any old oils and spills. It was previously used as a landfill, so a lot of old asphalt trucking material. So the idea is to cut down to a suitable level, backfill, cap it, and backfill with more clean soil. So the soil vapor screening barrier should make it safe, or will make it safe for everyone to be living on site.
So it's still volatile in spots here?
It'll be in areas that are very far below, you know, and exactly.
But you don't have a handle quite on that, right?
It's going through the brownfield program currently, so not a full handle just yet, but we will obviously before construction start.
Especially the playground area, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What's your community outreach look like? I know when we had a similar situation with like Lighthouse Point, and there was a lot of fill coming and going. There was like some talk about how to manage the trucks coming and like minimize disruption to the neighbors. I also imagine that a number of those houses will be quite interested in what's going up behind them. What's that like?
So we've got a pending citizens participation plan with DEC that's subject to their approval. Essentially, it starts with a public hearing. You start a mailer for anyone within a certain catch radius, and then we'll start hosting meetings to educate and explain what the construction activity is looking like, from all the kind of the SWIP approved type of documents to silt fencing, all the way through working wet, noise mitigation, hours of operation, things of that nature. But it really comes down to kind of educating and hearing out concerns to try to mitigate those concerns. So Mark has done a whole host of outreach and business meetings with folks in the community as part of the rezoning process a few years ago. So we'll be getting that going in the very near future as well.
And that's tied most closely with the brownfield cleanup program, or is it with the development as a whole?
I think it kind of duplicative. You could do both at the same time. And any kind of development we do work on, outreach is a good thing for housing.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
That neighborhood's been through quite a bit
Yeah.
of change in that rear parcel, and I can imagine that it's probably unsettling.
Yeah, and like you find a lot of through the communication and discussion phases, just things you should be considering from safety, facade, things to make it more community driven. So we're getting there, certainly.
I was going to ask about safety. You're going to be having a large community there. What type of safety, security are we having?
Yeah, so there'll be there's a budgeted amount for security service on site throughout the operations. There's also you have your typical surveillance cameras. So they'll have maintenance staff is typically on call 24/7 if there's any issues. But obviously if there's any kind of emergency related items, there's emergency based staff that can respond to that. First responders obviously are always there. But the goal is to really create a safe, welcoming environment that has a sense of community to it. And so by a matter of, lighting plans that are creating no dark spaces on the site, having, budgeted for operational security, and then also surveillance, you would think the combination of all the good planning and design and, the expenses that are put into it is going to address security.
You guys respond pretty well to management if there are problems in there?
Providence, so we work with firms in all regions of New York State, from Long Island to New York City, up the river, the Capital Region, west all the way over to Buffalo. And I think Providence Housing is one of the best managers that I've worked with so far. So I don't want to speak for them, but I would vouch for them that they have a very high level of service with their folks.
What do you anticipate in terms of fencing or screening between the rear of the backyards of the houses on Whitlock?
Yeah, so we'll have landscape screening back there, and then you know, whatever is required to adequately screen that area for the neighbors and comply with the codes.
I did check the EPOT map, and it looks like it is on the far east side, and it looks like on the satellite we got in front of us, a lot of it on the northeast corner is missing, but there does seem to be a good block of woodlot left on the southeast corner of that property.
Oh, I would just
I would say that if you
Center of the
cut your
property.
design in quarters, the bottom right corner,
It's considerable.
yeah. And you'll work through that, I believe, with Conservation Board. Won't it go to Conservation Board? Yeah, they'll probably have a list of things that they'd like you to do.
Quickly's is on this, so it's a very new picture.
For this, no,
You go ahead, yeah.
no, for the southern area, you know, as you're setting your clearing limits on your grading plan, maybe try to keep as much of the existing vegetation as possible, especially if it's scrub, and then just infill with native species. And then for the southern drive areas where we got the parking lots, perhaps some solid fencing at the end of those just to block headlights going into the residence there. And then just final comment regarding the emergency access to Hulda Park, you know, however that turns out, whether it's grass pavers or if we actually do a road connection, maybe consider, you know, a gate for EMS fire access only, so through traffic can come through there, but, you know, you could have a Knox box on it and the fire department can get to it.
Yeah, that's similar to what was done for the other property.
Okay.
We'll follow suit there.
But there'll still be conductivity of folks, pedestrian conductivity. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm in agreement, this southern border is gonna need to get really beefed up, especially for headlights. And you may wanna look real hard as you're putting any lights on in the parking area or anything like that to make sure that they're not, because
Yeah.
you have to remember, these guys have seen nothing but
So I didn't think you were
Dark sky
putting
forever.
lights in the parking lot. I thought you just said the buildings.
Well, I think no, we'll still have
they're gonna need.
parking in addition to the building lights that were described.
Yeah, there'll be site lighting.
But we'll make sure, you know, those will be, you know, 0-foot candles at the property lines, and maybe even on that south side, we pull
Those nice
that
little
back a little
bollards
bit.
with the lights on the top of them. They
Might
don't
need-
cost any more.
Might need a few of those. Yeah.
I think Alan's point about the bus is an important one. I'd just like to underscore that. You know, if I were a parent or a child in this development and looking to catch the bus, and if the bus was only going to pick me up on Culver, it's a little bit of a walk. I know, like, my students get to school at 7:30 in the morning, so they may be leaving well before the sun is up. And even if anyone is taking public transportation, they would probably have to go out to Culver Road. So anything we could do to make that more of a hospitable journey, I think would be welcome.
Any other questions?
So when are you guys gonna get a handle on the brownfield stuff?
The remediation plan's into the DEC right now for review, and we're awaiting some comments back, so we're probably a few months away before we finalize it.
And then is this gonna be a project through Community and Housing Renewal? Are you approved for that already?
No. We've been in discussions with HCR on financing plan.
Do you know what phase you're in for application?
It's very, I would call it conceptual at this stage.
Yeah,
Yes.
I work for the state, so I.
Man. Whereabouts?
Where you at with Lenny?
Good question. At the concept paper stage still. So we have to go through some details with the brownfields, the soil
He's
management
gonna
plan.
wanna know all about the
Oh, yeah.
brownfield, I know, more than I am.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and then obviously with the E-Pod issue is changing concept as well, so.
Yeah, so you guys are probably 8 months away from us.
I think it depends on our assessment of where we stand with site plan needs. So our primary goal is to work through the site plan approval process as quickly as possible. Typically, HCR wants to see site plan approval before you apply.
Yeah.
So, I think the funding piece of this is really driven by site plan approval.
Right.
And so, the quicker, I shouldn't say quicker that goes, but the quicker the
Because
construction
it'd be great
starts.
to have you guys use some of that time to talk to some of the neighbors, so they're not here in
Yeah.
mass to talk about everything that they wish they could have talked to you about.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, it's in every development we work on. You don't want to wait till the public hearings. You have the good outreach plan up front, and then you kind of
I'll
work
have
through
you
the whole
train every
process.
Developer.
One last question regarding the brownfield aspect. I know you guys said you've been working with DEC and you're still waiting to hear from them on the SEO of the classification. Have they said if they're going to be taking any easement over the property as part of the brownfield program?
I don't have an answer to that, I don't know,
Okay.
but I can find out.
Just in case it impacts your layout and whatnot.
Yep, we will definitely look into it, but, Ari couldn't be here tonight, she's our environmental engineer, and she
Okay.
would be the one to answer that question. So.
When I looked up the DEC, there was something in there looking for public comment. Were they looking for the neighbors to have comment?
Probably, I don't know.
Would they have known to do that?
They would have received a mailer as part of that process. So
But the property owner would have.
that's right.
Yeah. Not necessarily the tenant.
Correct.
That's always been the downfall of that system.
I thought they gave it to the property as well. That was,
I don't know.
I thought a mailer went to the parcel as well as the owner. But I
Mailing
could-
address to each,
yeah.
so whoever is residing at the address.
Cool. Believe it
any
or not,
questions
Bernie,
for
I
us?
have nothing else.
Any questions for us? Get enough input?
Yeah, okay.
Do you
List
love
of
us more than
25
you
things
did
or
when we
something?
first
Yeah.
started?
Even more.
No, all good information, so appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys doing this. I mean, these are helpful to us, too.
Well, thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.